All extracts are taken from titles within the Stories to be Told series. Copyright Tracy DW 2021. Hi everyone, Tracy DW here. Welcome back. It's our second episode of Season 2 and we're celebrating our first year of the podcast series. If you listened to my previous episode, you'll know that throughout October I'm sharing with you extracts from the next 3 stories. In this, the second of this triplet of episodes to celebrate Black History Month in the UK, we're going from Hong Kong all the way to the other side of the world, to New York. I'm going to share with you an extract from Bite from the Big Apple, a story for New York. This story originally complements the 6th podcast episode, The Book of Negroes, How Africa Came to Nova Scotia. I shared my learning journey about formerly enslaved African Americans who, during the American War of Independence, accepted the offer of freedom from British authorities if they fought on behalf of the British Crown. Many freed Africans, as well as those who were enslaved, seized this opportunity. Throughout the war period, Africans who were loyal to the British Crown provided both military and non-military assistance to the British Army. After the end of the war, the Treaty of Paris, signed in 1783, granted this relocation, and between April to November of that same year, around 3,000 Africans were sailed, mainly from New York, to Nova Scotia on the vessels chartered by the British. These newly crowned African Nova Scotians were truly a brave group of Africans, pioneers who migrated from America and created a settlement in Nova Scotia and other smaller settlements across that area in Canada from the late 1700s onwards. Before I read the extract, I would like to once again acknowledge my source, which is the amazing website of the Canadian Nova Scotia Archives. If you want to learn more about this topic, you can go to https://novascotia.ca/African-NS/. You'll find the link in the description with this podcast, and it will also be featured in a forthcoming learning journey on my website. So here's an extract from Bite from the Big Apple, a story for New York, and it's chapter 3 called Seize the Day. Though England had given birth to the rise of the 13 colonies, its sons of liberty were working hard to resist Mother England's policies. New York's location and its seaport was a prime location for a strike or a hit. We all know that George III sent an army to battle upsurges in 1776. The fight for independence was also a fight for the Africans to win or to lose. They could in no way serve 2 masters, the crown or plantation, you choose. They fought for their freedom in Lexington, Concord, and the climax in Yorktown. The Ethiopian regiment formed by Lord Dunmore was the first of its kind ever found. By 1780, 10,000 Africans escaped from the north and the south. They fought on both sides of the war, but most didn't look a gift horse in the mouth. This extract explores the dilemma that the Africans were in and suggests a dynamic that was full of contradictions. Freed and enslaved Africans fighting against each other on opposing sides and fighting with each other on opposing sides. It's interesting to imagine what were the incentives and the conflict of interests for all Africans at this time. How did Africans perceive the notion of freedom during this time? The main incentive was a fight for freedom, but on whose terms and conditions was freedom based on? Was this freedom solely about independence from the British Crown? If it was, then how did Africans think they would benefit from this? If freedom was based on relocation to other places within Britain's colonies, then what fate would await them there? Slavery was abolished by Britain almost 30 years later in 1807. It is suggested that after the Haitian Revolution, Britain felt it had a moral obligation to do so. The Slavery Abolition Act in 1833 made it illegal for slavery to continue to be practiced across Britain's empire, and this act officially came into force on the 1st of October 1834. It was some time after this before the newly formed United Colonies of America made the decision to outlaw slavery in 1862 with President Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation and the ratification of the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, which made this proclamation legally binding. Members of the African diaspora across the Americas, the Caribbean and Europe celebrate Emancipation Day on the 1st of August every year. In 2021, Emancipation Day was officially recognised in Canada for the first time. Let us not only recognise the day to commemorate the abolition of slavery, but also to acknowledge that where slavery still exists, there will always be a moral struggle, obligation and purpose of intent to overcome and begin to heal this deep scar in human history, even after its formal abolishment more than 2 centuries ago. If you liked this podcast, you can stay on my website or this listening platform and check out my other podcasts in relation to this one, such as The Book of Negroes, How Africa Came to Nova Scotia, Fire Sale, The Louisiana Purchase, 1803, Fire Sale, Expanded, War Crimes, Part 1, and also An Ode to Africville, together with the other Stories So Far episodes, all from the first, second, and third seasons. And don't forget what I call the heart and soul of the Stories to be Told movement. Yes, my stories, my other stories, all the other stories and poetic narratives that I have currently published: Caribbean Wind, Caribbean Rush, Nights at the Round Table, the Berlin Conference 1884, and Gone with the Wind, Macmillan's Speech for Change. These are all available on the website in both Kindle and paperback formats, and in ebook format at Apple Books and all other digital platforms. Also, the publication of the latest 4 titles. Now, if you want to find out more, just visit storiestobetold.com and check out the learning platforms for The Journey's End, Giving Back Hong Kong, Bite from the Big Apple, A Story for New York, Hope for Zimbabwe, Arise the Phoenix, and A Story for South Africa. You can visit storiestobetold.com for the other learning content, and where you can also sign up for my latest newsletter, the chance to win a promotional giveaway each month for one lucky person on my email list, as well as receiving your free samples of my first 4 titles. Finally, remember that you can also send me an audio message on the SpeakPipe link, which is also in the show notes, so don't be a stranger. Feel free to like, follow and share us on social media when you visit the website. Just click onto whichever social media link you would like to follow us on. And, as always, it's a pleasure and a privilege to share my learning journey with you in this podcast series, and I encourage you to either begin or continue your own. History is a matter of fact or perspective. I'm Tracy DW, and this is a Stories to be Told podcast. Stay safe, stay well, stay blessed. Thanks so much for listening again, and I'll see you on the next page.